Right now is obviously one of the moments. That's actually why I wanted to do this interview, which is it's just a personal pet peeve of mine. I hate not only when people mistell the history of esports, but when they're not only like factually wrong, they just get like the villain as the hero and the hero as the villain. I hate shit like that. It actually does really drive me mad, even when it's not to do with me. And so look, I obviously have an obvious bias in this particular case because this story is about TSM. So now comes the off season with the infamous meme that has haunted you for now almost fucking 10 years, even though, again, as I just alluded to, if people were to just actually take emotion out of it, put the facts in a chronological order, I cannot see how you're the bad guy, Reginald's the good guy, and you were owned somehow. As far as I can tell, you laid out for me, but the basic facts are you wanted to sign Svenskeren in the offseason. Obviously, SK had got relegated. At this time, he was considered the best European jungler, if people don't know. Like, you can argue the Reynolds thing, but Svenskeren was a stud back then, if people don't know. And on top of that, like, I even know he even admits, like, later in his career, like, he didn't make much money. This was one of those ones where, like, this is one of the reasons I hate the Riot off-season, where back then, it would just be, like, musical chairs, like, and go. The music started, and people, if they were young, would just get so scared, they would just sign the first day with people. Or if you're one you thought you wanted to sign with didn't, you just go with someone else. And so, because no one wanted to be the one in the musical chairs left with no chair. That's the worst scenario ever. So as far as I know, you contacted him, and early on, you had basically a verbal agreement over Skype or something, including, like, 5.5k. So if people don't know, the meme, you cretins, is that's enormous for the EU LCS. Yeah. That's like fucking more than people in Fnatic get paid. Like, that's mental money. So that wasn't like some meme like people think now, like, oh, all these offerings. That essentially you said to him, I'll break the bank for you, motherfucker. Like, I'm not TSM, but I can give you this. And basically, wasn't it something like, there's two details need to be added. One, he did give you a verbal agreement. You had it in the log that he would join. Now, people don't know this, especially considering this is all about a league in Germany. I was told this years ago. In Germany, you can have like emails that are counted as a contract if essentially someone tells you verbally you got the job. In fact, I believe they even go so far with labour laws there. If someone works in your company and never sign a contract, but you pay them as if they were an employee, they can later say, like, well, look, effectively, their actions show I was their employee. Like, people don't get it. They might have found out from the recent Excel stuff, there's a lot more sort of like protections for workers there, basically. So as far as I know, he essentially had committed to you, and you could actually have taken him a court, like you said. Then Reginald obviously swooped in. Look, we all get why people would go and join TSM and the money and all that shit. But the part that was so whack to me was Svenskeren. Look, he wouldn't even admit himself he was immature back then. But he did a really stupid thing, in my opinion, which was he tried to paint it that because he wouldn't join, that you actually harassed his mother. Now, here's the detail he didn't add. Wasn't his mother acting as his agent/lawyer in the negotiation? So he made it sound like you were just messaging it, like, give me your version of this. Because like I say, I've already sort of teased it up there that like a lot of it wasn't how it was presented. And the main part, unfortunately, just haunted you that way. So give me your take on this story.
Yeah, what's wild is you actually did a video at the time where obviously you don't have any insider info as far as I know at the time. You're just literally using the things that are publicly available, and you basically got it like all correct then. And like, to me, I never the reason why it painted a bad narrative was for me was purely because Reggie went on Reddit and basically lied. That's it. Like that's all that side. What actually happened is I go to Svenskeren very early in the off season. We had this is when the new American investment group had come in and bought out those two Norwegian guys I was talking about earlier. So they're now in. The budget's gone up a bit. I said to them, I think we should just pay, like, because as you say, this whole musical chair thing, I was like, I think we should pay them all the same amount, which by the way was 2,500, which was like fuck all. But back then was like decent. They were all on 1,500 the year before. I'm like, we should pay them all the same to just like avoid any conflict. Let's get our business done early. The only thing we want to change is jungle. So we wanted to keep Jan and Kasing, Odo and Ryu, and just upgrade jungle to Svenskeren, because with Lulex we were good enough to go to Worlds. With Svenskeren, I mean, we should be competing to win the split, right? So that was the logic. I go to Svenskeren early. I say, do you want to join HUK? Here's the offer, 2,500. The first thing he says to me is that he doesn't believe me that I have this much money. And I'm like, what? Because on SK, he was getting paid 500 a month.
There you go.
And actually, sometimes not even that, because they were dodgy with payments and stuff, you know? So he couldn't even fathom 2,500 a month. So I was like, okay, well, that makes things easier, right? Like, as soon as I show him proof of payment, then he's on board, it seems like, because obviously he likes the team or whatever. He then said that he would join verbally, and then TSM came in at this point. So and they make him an offer, which obviously, they're entitled to do, even though he has a verbal agreement. They don't know that, whatever. They come in, I have no issue with it. And then he basically reneges slightly, and he's like, oh, well, maybe TSM. But to be honest, the whole time he's saying he wants to join H2K, and that he's kind of implying that he's annoyed by TSM pestering him. That is basically the implication he's giving. So I'm like, I don't fully believe that. I'm not naive. I'm like, he is probably telling them the exact same thing about us to them, and, whatever. Like, I don't care. But I was like, okay, let's just close this thing fast. I'll offer you 5.5K. And a $50,000 signing bonus as well, by the way.
Yeah, that wasn't a thing back then.
So that is, and for those who are like, meme that as like, that was an astronomical amount of money for a contract for a player back then for EU. So that was just me trying to speed up the process, get it done and dusted and out the way and move on. And then Reggie came to me with this really stupid proposal of, look, we've got an IEM, I think it was an IEM tournament or something. And they're like, how about we trial Svenskeren for TSM, and if we don't want him, you can sign him like after this. I'm like, let me get this straight. If he goes and plays badly for you, you might let us have him. And I was like, oh, right. And he's like, yeah, so let's agree not to talk any more about this until like the event's over, and then we'll deal with it then. And I'm like, you do you, mate. So he hangs up thinking I've agreed to this like no contact thing with speaking to Svenskeren. Obviously, the first thing I do is speak to Svenskeren. I think that's actually when I added on the thing. I think I'd already offered 5.5K and like, and a 50K bonus, but you have to sign right now. So then he then agrees again. He's like, okay. So at this point, I send over the paperwork immediately. And he starts signing it, like actually signing it. It's one of those contracts where you have to initial at the bottom of each page.
Right.
So he has actually signed parts of the contract at this point. In fact, the only part I can't be 100% sure he signed, although I'm pretty sure he did, was the bottom bit where it says sign here to confirm. And I'm very sure that he actually did. But because I can't physically see it, obviously he can just retcon it later and say that he never actually signed that bit. But I'm talking him through how to sign the contract at this point. And then later that day or the day after, some minion has told Reggie, Reggie, you to go and check to see that what you agreed is actually upheld. And he's like, oh my God, this guy lied to me. I can't believe he talked to Sven after I came up with this brilliant idea for us both to not talk to him. And then he starts trying to talk to Sven again and then offers him more money and it gets rid of the trial idea. And he's like, here's a full offer, blah, 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 here's more money. So then Sven basically reneges on everything and signs with TSM. So, and this idea that like, I got outplayed by TSM and I threatened it. Like, it's, if anything, I outplayed him. I'm not going to say it was some insane 4D chess move, but this guy made a really stupid mistake, which I took advantage of. But, money talks and TSM talks and it is what it is. As for his mum, yeah, she was there the whole time, like, very friendly. Like, all our exchanges were super friendly. I probably shouldn't have done this, but I even leaked some of the emails exchanges between us because I was like, fuck this. Like, my name's getting dragged through the mud. And they were all just super sweet messages being like, I'm really worried about Sven's weight. Like, can you give me assurances that you guys are going to, help him with his diet and stuff like it was all absolute tame, like, yeah, nothing. And the only thing which could be perceived remotely as negative in terms of an exchange that happened between me and anyone on Svenskeren's family side. Again, by the way, it was always family. It was one person. It was his mum who was acting his agent, his lawyer. I never spoke to anyone else. And it was me on a Skype call with her saying like, well, your son did kind of agree to join us. And now I'm hearing that he's going to join TSM. So, yeah, I'm not really happy about this. Like, do you think we could have like a longer form chat about this situation or something like that? And that was it. That was literally it. And the whole thing of like, oh, you threatened legal action against him. No, motherfucker. Go back and actually read, because this Reggie leaks the chat logs, right? It's all there in black and white. We threatened, and by the way, we did exactly what we said we would do. We went after TSM legally for tampering. Sven's not guilty of tampering. He might be guilty of other stuff, but that's neither here nor there. We didn't address it. We wrote a legal letter, which Richard Lewis published, which is addressed to TSM about legal tampering. And my chat log supports that completely 100%. And if you interpreted it any other way, you either did so dishonestly or you can't read. Like, it was a legal threat against TSM, which we actually enacted on that threat. So there's no, like, and this, by the way, this is something that I've noticed so many times. Whenever someone says, like, haha, 5.5K, or does anyone believe this guy after the TSM shit? It's always phrased in the most vague, like, nonsensical way possible. And whenever anyone asks someone to elaborate, they can't. They either say, Google it, or they say, you know, that thing with Sven. Because they don't actually understand. They just heard like Reggie go on Reddit once and say, rich bad. That's it. Like that's literally it. So yeah, my crime, as far as I'm aware, is offering a guy a really good contract. I don't know. It's just bizarre.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.